Hey, it's Don the Auction Professor. Today I wanted to talk about setting some goals and some strategies for sourcing in 2020. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about some strategies for sourcing in 2020. Now, for those of you who've watched my channel, you know I've done clothing quite extensively for a while. We did scanning of books and all kinds of other things throughout the time of us doing this. That was a good start. It got us into it. We got rolling. We had a ton of inventory, sold a lot of stuff, and we've branched out from there, obviously. Now, there's one thing I can tell you from working for other people, as well as working for myself for a decade, doing just what you see us doing right here. You can't rely on things like thrift stores or garage sales to build your business. There's no guarantee whatsoever. Now, don't get me wrong, I love thrift stores, so, I still love going to thrift stores. Even if I'm not doing it for sourcing, I still love looking at the stuff. So, thrift stores can be great, but for many people like us, they may not have the sourcing avenues at a thrift store. The two biggest, best, closest thrift stores to me were two Savers that closed down like 3 years ago or so. And it cut off a huge amount of inventory for many people around here when they went under. The Goodwills have now stepped up. A lot of the merchandise goes to higher end auctions and things along that line. It goes to shopgoodwill.com as well. Salvation Army, same thing. They've been plucking it out. There was only a handful of decent stores in the first place around here. The closest decent thrift store to me is almost 40 minutes one way to get to it. And there's no guarantee once I get there that I will find anything at all, because it's been getting slimmer and slimmer to find things out in the natural world, I guess you could say. So to rely on just those types of things, those type of venues, is not a sustainable or a buildable model for the most part for most people. Now, I know there's a lot of people that can make a lot of money from doing thrift stores, but you can't just look at what's going on right this very second. You got to look ahead. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when we first started doing this, there wasn't much competition at all. It was just pretty much us going in there and scoring stuff left and right. Everywhere we went, it seemed. As the time has went on now, less and less of those good items are showing up across the board. Every thrift store is the same way. For most thrift stores, the number one clientele these days are resellers, and they know that. So they've been changing up their strategies, their pricing, the whole works. The biggest thing I can say to help combat this is to find sources for wholesale, bulk purchases, people to pick for you, sources that are outside the box, sources that you can routinely get replenishables, more of the same thing. It doesn't matter what it is. I can get replenishables on records, I can get replenishables on paper, postcards. Now, it's not necessarily the exact same items, but it's the same line of stuff. It keeps us in business day after day after day, picking up the same types of items, finding sources for maybe one specific item in one specific place, and then figuring out how to keep buying those and getting return purchases from those same things. That's the best and only way I know as of today to expand your business. I'm not saying you can't make a lot of money. I'm not saying at all that thrift stores aren't good sources. Just in the last few years, it's gotten much tougher with this going on. For me, again, Savers closed down. It doesn't matter to me competition. Competition wasn't an issue to me because I could still find stuff. But with stores closing down like this, you can't rely on them. It's just like working for somebody else and worrying about getting fired, laid off, or the company closing down. It's the same aspect for some of these thrift stores. Probably once a week, somebody sends me a message or texts me or something stating one of their thrift stores went under and closed the doors on them. So you never know what's going to go on. Now, I know wholesale and RA and stuff like that isn't for everybody. Even the RA model only works to a certain extent. For RA, for example, you have to know what you're doing. You have to want to be involved in it. You have to spend the time, the drive time, the search time, the research time to do it. Just like what I do, it's the same thing. It's just a different model. Wholesale, same basic thing that I do, just a different model. There's so many other ways to do this. Whatever you do, though, the biggest thing, as I say, is you've got to have another line of inventory. You can't just rely on thrift stores. For those of you who do garage sales and you're just into thrifting and reselling to start with from this past summer, you got winter here now. There's not as many garage sales up in this area where we're at all. You won't find any. You won't find many estate sales. You won't find many outside flea markets. You're going to have to find other venues to find the stuff at. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till your best sourcing location closes down or something happens or the prices go crazy and they shoot them up through the roof. Start looking now. Start building on your business. Investigate stuff. Now, one thing that we do is we have niches that we're in. And with those niches, I have people that specifically source only like one single specific item for me. And those people routinely get me the same item. They're not necessarily resellers or in the business to do that. It's just something that shows up in their business. And I give them money for something that normally they would discard, give away, or the employees would take it. I give them cash for stuff like that. This is something I had to dig into. This is something that I had to figure out all from scratch and having a clue on how to go about doing something like this. Anything is possible. Anybody can do the exact same thing. You can find your own sources. You can find niche markets. I've got niche people for quite a few things: paper, postcards, records, posters, musical items, comic books, action figures, all these sources. I have people that can get me those specific items for me, as well as a multitude of other items. But I have specific people that get me posters every 2 months, every 3 months. I've got people that call me sometimes a couple times a week during certain times of the year and supply me with records or all this kind of stuff. Now, again, I'm not telling you to avoid thrift stores or anything like that. Hammer them hard, do whatever you need to do with that. But I would be looking ahead and trying to find these other sources as well. Get one, hammer that one, get another one, search outside the box, get people that are in industries that have stuff that you want to buy. A lot of people don't know there's a market for certain things. A lot of people who are in the business to do one thing don't realize that there's carryover and that other people may be interested in that. So look in the phone book is a good source of opportunities. Just randomly pull up a page in the phone book and think, what would that company, what would that business, the yellow pages of course, what would that business sell? What would they have left over? Are there discards from that business? Is there something that business doesn't know what to do with? Is there something that they don't know how to discard it properly? Is there something that's recyclable that maybe they weren't recycling? There's so many opportunities out in the real world, you would be surprised. I mean, it's just astonishing all the things that people do that most people haven't a clue or would be shocked to hear how they make money. I'm not shocked anymore. We can make money doing all kinds of oddball things on a platform online, from a house, from a warehouse, from a garage, from wherever you do it. The opportunity's there. Too many people take where they're getting their stuff from for granted and don't look to investigate new areas because they're fine with what's going on now. They're finding good stuff. But next year it might not be that way. So set yourself up for success, not for failure. Don't just rely on what you got going right this very minute. It's not looking ahead to the future. If you want to do this for a living, you can't just think about tomorrow or next week. You've got to be thinking about next year, the year after that, your retirement, whatever the case may be, wherever you're at in your career. I've done this for 10 years. So at this point in my life, this is the case of where we're going with the rest of our career, is to keep going with this. I make so much more money than I have doing all kinds of other stuff, including being a regional. So this is where I'm going. But I've spent 20 years selling on the platform, 10 years full-time. We make money from 9 different sources. So, you know, I've expanded, I've investigated, I've spent a ton of time researching it. For the last 10 years, this is all I have done full-time, day in and day out, every day of the week, across those entire 10 years. So I'm not distracted by other things. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not working for anybody else. Everything I do is done towards stuff that I could resell. I do art. I'm in other industries. I worked in the restaurant fields. I worked in retail. So I know certain things that maybe everybody might not know. I know that certain wholesalers do this. I know that certain establishments get this product in, and after a certain time they phase out the product. So I know there's certain things that you can get here, certain things you can get there. Now, I do source at local live auctions and estate sales occasionally too. Not nearly as much as I used to because I don't really need to as much, but there are 100% good sources of places to go to. At most auctions I go to, I'll far outweigh the amount of items that I get there at an auction over any thrift store, any garage sale that I could go to, and I'll usually make way, 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 way more money going to a local live auction than I ever would sourcing for an entire day. And at a local live auction, I'm usually there for 2 or 3 hours max, and I'm out. And that's it, unless you want to stay till the end on table cleanups. So that's a way to break into other areas and other categories to find stuff outside your box if you never went to a place like that. There's just so many opportunities, even if you don't want to do the local live auction, even if you don't want to do estate sales or you don't know those areas. Like I just said, just use the phone book. Pick up some random thing. Do a Google search. Just type in some word, tin, type in plastic, just some word and look into it. Find some item. Maybe something you've never thought about. You'll go ahead and find an item. You can go do some research, check out some comps, and you may realize there's a huge market in something that no one else has touched. We've got some key items that we sell over and over again that we've been selling for more than 3 years without competition. So it's looking outside the box. It's finding a niche that maybe isn't even there yet. Now, a lot of people find things so far out of the box that no one would even expect it to be a profitable thing. A pet rock, a Snuggie, a Chia Pet. These are all things that are just novelty, nothings really. But, you know, they found something outside the box. They found a niche and they did something with it. Now, sourcing-wise is the same type of thing. We source all kinds of places that, you know, anybody in their right mind would say, well, what the heck could you possibly find there at that type of place? You would be surprised what shows up where. Show up at some place you normally wouldn't go to if it sells something. Show up at secondary sources. Show up at like little ma and pa outlet liquidators. You know, there's just so many options to source from. You just have to find out what works for you and what you feel comfortable with and what you honestly like and enjoy doing. I've steered away from clothing. I'm not saying I couldn't make money at clothing. It would be really tough around here since Savers closed down, but it's still a viable market for people. And it depends on where you live, of course, but I didn't like clothing. I like what I sell now. Even if I have wholesale on the side and I'm doing RA, you know, I still have the vintage, the collectibles in my mix. So no matter what happens, I've got a wide range of items. I have a wide range of sourcing locations for those items. I even have, as I said, specific niche sourcers who can get me just one specific item every so often, enough to keep me in business for a long period of time. And one last thing, people talk about dead piles and dead stock. There is no such thing in my book. It's just back stock, meaning when I don't want to go out and source, or I can't find something. Not the case really for us, but if you can't find something, it's backstock to list when you don't have other sources going on. In the winter, as I've said in the past, I buy a ton of stuff in the summer when it's dirt cheap, and I stockpile it. In the winter, I barely go sourcing at all unless somebody calls me, or there's some phenomenal thing going on that pulls me out to go to this place. Other than that, I don't have to worry at all about sourcing, especially in the winter. It pretty much falls in our lap these days, just from all the contacts and conversations I've had in the past. So anyway, that's just a touch on this. Don't just rely on what's going on right now. Look ahead till next year. Look ahead to 2 years. Look ahead to 3 years. If you want this for your career, you're not just talking about today. You are talking about for the rest of your possible life doing this. So you're going to darn well need to investigate other avenues, other venues of sourcing than just thrift stores and just garage sales. There are so much better places to source with more opportunities to get more items all at the same time in bulk at a cheap price where you can make a ton of money instead of randomly hitting stuff from thrift stores. Again, I love thrift stores, but they're not what they used to be. But that's about it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.